All right. So before we get to the good stuff, we need to actually make sure that everything is named appropriately. Now, for fuck's sake, please name your shit properly. It makes it so much easier to do this, especially in Maya where everything is so goddamn technical. Name your stuff. Honestly, every single step, give it a name, make it clear as day. Don't even worry about adding abbreviations if you don't want to. If you want to have a full name and description of what that thing does, do it, especially when you're learning it for the first time. The only reason why these abbreviations exist is probably because 20 years ago, having a longer name actually affected the performance of the damn rig. Nowadays, that's not a problem. So don't even think about worrying about that right now. As you get more experienced and you have a sort of a memory of what each thing does, you can start to add more abbreviated words to designate certain joints. But for now, keep it really, really clear. All right. So starting from the root joint, we're going to go ahead and call this one. You can actually use this little naming thing here, by the way. It may be hidden away, or it may be hidden by another thing like this. But you can actually rename it from here. So I'm going to actually rename this one root joint, or in this case, you can call it global control or global. Let's go with root. Root one. Going down the chain, joint one will be called hips. Moving up the chain, let's have a look down the hierarchy now. Joint 2, in this case, will be called spine 1. And here's a little trick, by the way. If you have multiple joints that you need to rename, 1, 2, 3, these all have to have the same name. We can just go ahead and select all 4, type in the name, and it automatically names them all. 1, 2, 3. How cool is that? All right. Next joint here is the shoulder. So we're going to call that, I might actually call that, yeah, let's call that clavicle because it is actually representing the clavicle. Or no, let's call it shoulder because in the end, if we want to link up a shoulder control to the shoulder joint, it's easier to remember. So let's call this one shoulder. But in this case, we need to give it a designation. In this case, it's going to be underscore L. We want to make sure we have everything nice and clean. All right, cool. Next one we're going to do is the upper arm. Upper arm L, like so. Next one, forearm underscore L. And now we get down to the nitty gritty, the hand underscore L. All right. Making sure that we're keeping things nice and clean. We're going to select our, let's see what we got here. Oh, we've got to the head as well. So let's go ahead and do that. This one will be neck 1. Neck 2. Well, let's do that properly. Let's do that properly. Select those 2, neck. Classic. Oh, gosh. All right, let's clear out that and name it ourselves. Neck 1. Neck 2. Head. And finally, in this case, call it head end. All right, save that. Let's move down to the, oh, shit. Let's move down to the hand. Now, if you're having trouble selecting or getting into view with this, just select the hand, push F on the keyboard, and that will focus you into that area. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and rename the thumb. So I'm just going to select everything down this chain here. So let's open that up. So everything down here, I'm going to call that thumb underscore L. Done. Everything down here will be called index underscore 1 or L. This one's middle. underscore L. And you can actually write down middle finger if you have to, but I'm just going to keep it simple for my sake. This one we'll call ring underscore L. And then finally, we have pinky underscore L. Cool. Now, these ones here at the end, it's probably smart to call these thumb end dot L and just make your way through that like so. Because they aren't going to really do much. They're more just structural. They'll be useful for stuff if you ever wanted to do like IK controls and stuff. Or add effectors in, say, Unity or Unreal. All right, cool. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, the legs. Yes. So the legs now, same thing. Work our way down. Thigh. Well, I can actually type it up here. Sorry. Keep it up. May as well keep it consistent. L. Actually, call that shin or calf. L. This one we called foot. L. Toes. L. And finally, we have toe end underscore L. So toe end underscore L. Cool. There we have it. We have our hierarchy set up, and now we are almost ready to mirror things out. Okay, so before we finish up the mirroring process, we just need to make sure that the joints that we have along the midsection of our body and along the legs are in the right spot as well. So let's go ahead and just jump into side view in right view here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the move tool, push D on my keyboard, and just line up my joints a little bit more, like so. So that when I go to actually rig these things, that the center of gravity along these are actually the center mass is being affected the most. So I'm just going to go ahead and realign those. Just to remind you guys, I pushed D to allow myself to adjust the pivot point of these joints. So the neck, for instance, should definitely be in the center of the space there. Same thing for this one here. Should be probably somewhere along here. Let's try and keep that neck relatively straight though. Like so. The head looks all right, but I might move that one up a little bit more. Base of that is good. Let's push D once more and move that forward just a little bit. There we go. Perfect. All right, now that our joints are lined up, we need to address one big issue that we have before we mirror this thing out. And that is the local rotation axes of all of these joints. Now, let me explain. Firstly, let's go ahead and visualize the orientation of all of these joints as they are right now. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and select everything in my hierarchy. And before I go ahead and use the display tool, what I'm going to do is quickly create a selection set. And this means that if I ever want to turn it off and on or select these joints more often, or turn things off and on across the entire thing, I just have to select that selection set and then we can move on. So let's go to select all your hierarchy, then go to select or modify. And we are going to create. So go to create and go down to sets, quick selection set, and call that uh, deform joints. And you can actually add that to the shelf. We'll actually add it to the shelf here. Ah, bullshit. Of course it didn't do that. That being said, it's still here. So that means if I wanted to select that, I can still select the entire hierarchy. And there's my selection set. Just makes it a little bit easier to select everything in one hit. All right, cool. After we've done that, we're going to go to display, transform display, local rotation axes. And that's just going to display what it says on the tin, the local rotation axes of all of these joints. Now we have an issue with all of these local rotation axes is that they're all pointing the same way. And when they point all the same way, we run into problems if we want to have a certain kind of functionality within the rig. Now, in Blender, this is pretty straightforward because when you create a joint, you're actually creating a bone, which already sets in the primary axis of rotation along Y along that joint. Whereas in Maya, you can go in any direction that you want. And as you can see here, they're all facing the world space because we created that original joint in world space, and therefore it kept the local rotation axes to match the world space. Now, this could be good in certain circumstances, but in this case, it's not because ultimately what I want to do is try and make this rig as functional as possible for the animator. And what I mean by that is that I want the animator to be able to animate this thing without even really having to thinking about which is what control to work with first or which direction should I rotate first. Um, so for instance, if I want the body to rotate this way, rotate forward, right? I want them to know that for the most part, all they need to do is use the x axis in either negative or positive directions to get a certain behavior. And I like to make sure that that's the case across the entire rig. So, for instance, if there's a common rotation that is used all the time in a character, such as bending the body forward or rotating the arm back and forth, that I want to make sure that it's relatively the same axis every time. So, right now in the spine, the axes aren't too bad. If I rotate forward in positive X, the body rolls forward. Um, if I do that in the neck, the body rolls, the head rolls that way as well. The problem, however, lies or starts when we start to look at the arm. Now, right now, if I want to move the arm down, it's rotating in Z. And if I want to move the arm back and forth, which is going to be probably my most common rotation, it's rotating in Y, which isn't what I want. I want it to rotate in positive X. All right. But right now, the only way that we're getting an X value here is if we roll the arm, which is just not what we want. We don't want that at all. The other thing as well is that every joint is aligned to the world space. So if I go ahead and roll this joint, it's moving the elbow joint quite a lot as well in both translation and rotation. So we need to fix that in a major way. And this is happening throughout the entirety of this rig. So it's happening along the arms and the fingers and the toes. So we're going to go ahead and fix all of that. So let's just go ahead and select the entire set of joints here. So I'm going to select hierarchy names to begin with, hierarchy. And I'm just going to go ahead and freeze the transforms on all those so that everything is aligned as they would be, as you'd expect. Um, And then I'm going to go ahead and start to figure out which way to align or orient all of these joints. So starting with the spine is looking okay, but the Y axis is still pointing directly up. So I want it to sort of follow the joint chain here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select these joints, and it's going to base it off of the direction of this joint here. So I'm going to select 1, 2, 3, and 4 up the spine for now. And then we're going to go to skeleton, orient joint, and open up the options panel. And let's have a look. All right. So I want my primary axis, which is the roll of the joint, to be on Y. I still want it to face up along the joint chain. So my primary axis is going to be Y. All right. Now, I also want my body to roll forward in X. So I want my secondary axis, in this case, to be X. And then finally, my secondary world axis orientation as well. I want it to be X in the positive. Now, let's check this out. Let's push apply. And some things have happened. The joints are now sort of facing their appropriate direction along the joint chain. Now, if we go ahead and have a little squiz, let's try rotating this hip, for instance. It's now rotating in positive X along there. It's rotating in positive X along here. And rotating along positive X along here. Like so. Perfect. The problem is, however, is that I've actually accidentally clicked Orient Children of Selected Joints Turned On. So I'm actually going to undo that and do that again with only these selected joints. Hips, spine 1, spine 2, and spine 3. I'm going to go ahead and deselect this Orient Children of Selected Joints, push apply, and now it's only affected these 3 joints. That being said, I am going to do that the same thing along the head joints. Same one, apply. So now it will also behave in the same way. Rotate in positive X forward, negative X backwards, and then in Y, it's going to rotate around. And in Z, what's the likelihood of doing this? So, yes, that should be fine. Although we can flip this. All right, so let's have a look at the shoulders now. And this will probably populate down the arm. I'm not sure yet, but we'll have a look. Now, the primary axis I want to have this shoulder behave is sort of back and forth along X. So when the body's moving back and forth and the arms are swinging back and forth, I kind of want this one to be X. The next one I want to be affected will be Z, up and down. And then I want the roll to be Y. And right now it's X, which is not what I want. So in order to fix that, I think this will be the option. So I'm going to select these 2 joint chains, or actually go down the elbow as well. So my primary axis is going to be Y, down the joint chain, around the joint chain, Y. The secondary axis will be X. And then the secondary world axis orientation will be Y again. And in order to get this to rotate in the positive direction along here, I'm going to actually set this to negative. Push OK. I'm going to turn off Orient Joint Children and push apply. Let's check that out. So now let's move this back and forth. When I rotate along X, it's actually going in the right direction. Now, that's the reason why we set this to negative, because in positive Y, in the Y orientation in the world space, this is technically negative, a negative value. But if we flip it and make it negative there, it cancels it out and creates a positive number. So that's just what we want. Now, if we roll it backwards, that's in negative X, which is, again, correct for me. For me, that is. And then if we rotate the arm down, that's going to be in negative Z. If we rotate the arm up like that, that's in positive values, which could be correct. I think that's fine for me. And the same thing with the arm. So let's bring that arm down, negative. But this is the one I want to care about, positive X. Perfect. All right, cool. Let's have a look at the actual elbow. Now, the elbow is simple because it's only going to be rotating on one axis anyway. And that's rotating on X. Perfect. Now, the roll is working fine as well in positive numbers down the joint chain. Lovely. All right, same thing down here. That's going well. And we can probably get away with doing the same thing on the hand as well. So I'm actually going to go ahead and orient that too. Let's just push orient, apply. Ooh, it affected other things as well, it looks like. That's okay. Because ultimately, now we need to fix up the fingers. So we can actually do this along the entire joint chain. So I'm actually going to turn on Orient Children of Selected Joints. And starting with the first metacarpal, Let's figure this out. So the primary axis, again, is going to be Y because I want it to travel down the joint chain. The secondary axis is, again, going to be X. Um, as for the secondary world orientation, that will actually be, if we think about our orientation of the world, Z. And in the case of this currently, let's have a look and see and rotate this now, positive Z. It may need to be negative. So let's go ahead and keep that on negative and push apply. And let's have a look and see what the difference is here. And I think that's actually working to our advantage. Let's try rotating this on X now. Nice. X, X, X. Fucking A. That's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So let's go ahead and do the same thing down the joint chains here. And that's actually reorienting all the joints down the joint chain. So now all of them are rotating in the fashion that I want. So if I select all of these and rotate along X, whoops, let's grab the X there. You can see it's rotating exactly in the same direction. That's exactly what I want. So a positive number for the most common rotation. And in this case, along X is just what I want. Now for the thumb, it's a little bit trickier because it's at a right angle, but let's give it a go. Orient. And it's not perfect. We need to sort of orient this along here. Let's see what we can do. All right. It's not perfect, but I think I have a solution. So what we're going to have is a primary axis of Y, and that will automatically make the secondary axis Z. And then the secondary world axis will be in Z as well. And then a negative value to get the rotation to work the way we want. Let's go ahead and push apply and see how that works. Now you can see here that the axis is not that bad. Like the rotation axis isn't that bad. It's rotating in the right direction and it's right. It's basically rotating as an opposable thumb. The only problem is that our thumb isn't completely aligned to that orientation. Now, that could be a problem depending on how fussy you are with your deformations, but I'm going to roll with that for now. I don't want to go too crazy with trying to make this perfect. So I think this will be fine. For this last joint, you'll see here that this last joint isn't being affected by the orient joint thing. It's actually all screwed up. So the simple solution is to select that last joint and click orient joint to world, push apply, and then it takes on whatever the parent object has. All right, cool. So the hands are done. Let's check out the legs. So the legs are pretty simple. I want the primary axis to be this way. Right now it is correct. I want the Y to be in the other direction. Right now it's facing up, not down toward the leg. So we need to fix that. And then the Z doesn't really matter. So because that's going to be like this. And how often do you do that? If anything, that would probably be positive. Maybe that would be negative. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right. So what we're going to do here is grab the leg and let's have a look and see what we can do. Let's just turn this off, turn this off. And primary axis is going to be Y. Secondary axis will be X. And then the secondary world axis orientation will also be X. In my opinion, I think that will be correct. And then let's see if it works in the positive. Let's push apply. Actually, let's do the whole children. That looks pretty good. Yes, I think that looks correct. So now if we rotate this backwards, that's in the positive, negative, rotate Y, and then this way, negative Z. That's fine. Same with the leg. I just did it down the joint chain, so that's going good. Positive, yep, that's great. This one could be in the other direction, but I'm actually going to keep it as is for now. And this one, again, we could flip it, but I'm thinking that just for the sake of simplicity, that this joint can go negative Z. a negative X on that rotation and down like that. That just keeps the whole joint chain. Yeah, that keeps the whole joint chain nice and consistent because it's such a simple little joint chain that I don't want to go flipping orientations around this whole thing because then we got to think about the order of rotation across everything else. So yeah, that is the entirety of our rig ready to roll in terms of our local rotation axes. Now we need to think about our rotation orders because we want to avoid gimbal lock at any possible moment.